Thank you very much, Deacon Hendricks, and thank you, our visitors, especially for coming out on a day like this. I'm very gratified that you have considered the issue so important that in some instances you have come back, in other instances you have come for the first time. This is a three-part course, or a course with three parts. We conclude next Sabbath at 4:30. I wouldn't like you to be like a number of persons who start a course and drop out before the course ends. It's important that, like the patient, you take the full dose, because without the full dose, there is no guarantee. Indeed, your recovery or health is threatened. So do remember that next week's Sabbath at 4:30, I make it more convenient for you. At 4:30 in the afternoon, I will conclude pointing out why it is not just the weekly Sabbath that must be observed, but that there are 7 annual Sabbaths which are also binding. Now that will be particularly challenging for Seventh-day Adventists and Church of God Seventh-day members who do not keep the annual holy days. So I definitely would love to have your presence when I will make the case for the continuity of the holy days. I want to recap some of the points that I made last week, especially for those who were not here, and then to deal with the points that I had promised last week to address this week. As I said, I've thought about this so much, and I've wondered what angle to come from, having read and listened to so many of the arguments against the Sabbath. And last week I think I made a methodological breakthrough, because I pointed out that a major conceptual flaw that is made is that a whole host of texts in the New Testament that seem to be negative about the law are used to dismiss the Sabbath. And the fact is that when that word law, Greek nomos, is used, it is used in reference to a number of specific commands, only one of which is the Sabbath. And therefore, when a person quotes Romans 14, not Romans 14, Romans 10, that Christ is the end of the law to everyone who believes. When someone quotes Romans 10 to say that the Sabbath is abolished, because it says Christ is the end of the law, and yet that person believes that the other 9 of the Decalogue, 9 of the commandments in the Decalogue still stand. Why would the person use that general text? Because that text would also apply to the other 9. All of the general text. I mean, you go through the book of Romans, and you read what seem to be trenchant texts against the Sabbath. No human being will be justified in his sight by the works of the law. So that is used to say you mustn't keep it out because you're not saved by works. You're saved by grace. But that law did not only refer to the Sabbath. It referred to the law against adultery, against murder, against lying and stealing. The point I'm raising is, if we are to have a sensible discourse on the issue of the Sabbath, you cannot be just using these general texts. And I said last week that I was helping the Sunday keepers themselves to make their case better. Because what I want to help the Sunday keepers to do is to focus more specifically and narrowly on the issue of the Sabbath so we can save some time. I was very happy that my good friend and very sharp critic Jason felt that the approach that I had taken was a very useful one. He's been very sharp mentally, meant that he grasped the significance of the point that I was making, and I'm very happy about that. And that saved us last week from people getting up and using us as a general argument. I mean, there was hardly any question, because I had taken the wind out of people's sails. And all the regular texts about curses, everyone who doesn't abide by all the things in the law, and you're not justified by law, and the law is not of faith. Those texts did not come up rightly. We didn't hear Romans 7 and verse 6, but now we are freed from the law. We didn't hear that. Because if someone says that we are freed from the law, meaning that we don't need to keep the Sabbath, I will remind him that that law refers to commandments that he believes in. So it doesn't serve any useful purpose to draw these texts, to say that we're not serving under the old written code. It doesn't help us to go to 2 Corinthians 3. Let me raise the arguments before they are raised and save some time. It doesn't help us to go to 2 Corinthians 3 and to make the contrast between the splendor of the new covenant as contrasted with the fading glory of the old. And to talk about the dispensation now, verse 2 Corinthians 3, 7. It's the dispensation of death carved on letters of stone. And by the way, the Adventists, particularly my colleagues in Sabbath keeping, they like to put a big emphasis on the 10 Commandments written by God's own fingers and so on. Yeah, but what 2 Corinthians is referring to? This that was carved in stone. That whole dispensation was referred to as the dispensation of death. So whether it was written by God's fingers or not, there is a covenant that supersedes that. But before the Sunday keeper rejoices, I point out that the 9 choice commandments, which the Sunday keepers still believe are in vogue, are included in this. So when you quote this text to me, the dispensation of death and the 10 commandments was the dispensation of death, well, I only have one that I'm defending you. You have 9. So that these general texts do not advance the discussion. I can draw the strongest text of the Sunday keepers here. The arguments are in Galatians. The strongest texts are in Galatians. Galatians 4, that talks about God sent forth his Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, so that we might receive adoption as sons. Yes, of course. The law, which includes the law against adultery and against murder. So all of these general texts, the comparison between Hagar, the 2 women, the children of promise, and the children of bondage, all of these